Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Stephanie Tremblay. I'm one of the spokespersons in the spokesperson's office. Welcome to the noon briefing. In a short while, I will be joined by the acting resident and humanitarian coordinator for the UN in Myanmar, Andrew Kirkwood. He will be joining us virtually from Yangon to brief on the situation on the ground. And I have a couple notes before we join the guests. I will start with a statement by the Secretary General on Ethiopia. I was shocked by the information that the Government of Ethiopia has declared 7 UN officials, including senior UN humanitarian officials, as persona non grata. All UN humanitarian operations are guided by the core principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. In Ethiopia, the UN is delivering life-saving aid, including food, medicine, water, and sanitation supplies to people in desperate need. I have full confidence in the UN staff who are in Ethiopia doing this work. The UN is committed to helping Ethiopian people who rely on humanitarian assistance. We are now engaging with the Government of Ethiopia in the expectation that the concerned UN staff will be allowed to continue their important work. This morning, the Secretary General virtually addressed the pre-COP26, which is taking place in Milan. He said that with just 1 month to go before COP26, it is essential for all humanity that we fulfill the promise of the Paris Agreement. The Secretary General commended nations, especially vulnerable developing countries, that have come forward with more ambitious nationally developed contributions despite the pandemic. However, he underscored that we can only meet the 1.5-degree goal if all G20 countries, which are responsible for 80% of global emissions, pledge more decisive action in new or updated contributions. He also asked emerging economies to take the extra step and deliver more emissions cuts. We are all in the same boat, he said, and we have to pull together, adding that civil society is watching closely and is running out of patience. Also today, the Secretary General addressed in a video message the Youth for Climate pre-COP event. He encouraged young people to keep raising their voices and putting pressure on leaders to ramp up ambition. On Sudan now, this morning the Secretary General spoke at the high-level side event on the Sudan, which aimed to seek and affirm global engagement and support for the Sudanese people. He said that despite the challenges, Sudan has made milestones, including advances in democratic governance, peacemaking efforts, and ambitious economic reforms. The international community must do everything possible to help advance these and other efforts, he stressed, adding that the UN Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan was created last year to provide a new basis for our support. The Secretary General stressed that women's inclusion and meaningful participation will benefit the future of all Sudanese. He pointed to Sudan's complex security challenges, including the recent attempted coup d'etat. It underscores, he said, the importance of undertaking all efforts to protect civilians, strengthen human rights, and provide safety and security for all. We have shared his remarks with you. Yesterday afternoon, we issued a statement on the report of the high-level panel on internal displacement, which was formally submitted to the Secretary General earlier in the day, following 18 months of research and consultations. The Secretary General expressed his deep gratitude to the panel for its work and the co-chairs for shepherding this process and for presenting the panel report. The Secretary General reiterated his commitment to work with all relevant stakeholders to address the global displacement crisis with renewed vigor, benefiting from the insights of the high-level panel report. Again, the full statement is online. Now moving on to Afghanistan, the UN's Children's Fund said that its first aircraft carrying life-saving medical supplies arrived yesterday in Kabul through the European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations Air Bridge. UNICEF said that the 32 metric tons of essential drugs, overall rehydration salts and antibiotics, medical and surgical supplies will cover the needs of 100,000 children and women for the next 3 months. The UN Children's Fund added that this this is the first of 2 consignments planned to be flown into Kabul via the European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations Air Bridge in the coming days. The UN strongly condemns the killing of Rohingya refugee leader Mohib Ullah in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh yesterday. The UN urges the Bangladesh authorities to undertake an investigation and to hold those responsible to account. We urge continued strong international support for the protection and support to the Rohingya communities anywhere, including in Bangladesh. The UN continues to call for the voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable return of Rohingya refugees and internally displaced persons. The UN will continue to firmly provide its support in this endeavor. The UN Refugee Agency also expressed its deep shock and sadness at the killing of Mr. Ullah. Now, turning on to the Gambia, the Secretary General is following developments in the Gambia after the postponement of the final report of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, which had been scheduled for submission to the President of the Gambia today. He commends the Commission for its tireless work and urges the government to ensure a speedy completion of the process. The UN, including through the Secretary General's Peace-Building Fund, has been a staunch partner in the transitional justice process in the Gambia, including the work of the Commission, and reassures it would like to reassure of its continued support for its completion and the full implementation of its recommendations to promote access to justice and reparations for the victims, as well as national reconciliation in the country. Now turning to a quick update on COVID-19 in Africa. Today, the World Health Organization said that 15 African countries, which is nearly a third of the continent's 54 nations, have fully vaccinated 10% of their population. As you will recall, in May, WHO's World Health Assembly set a global goal of fully vaccinating 10% of every country's population by today, actually, by the end of September. Nearly 90% of high-income countries have met this target. Most of the African countries that have met the 10% goal have relatively small populations, and 40% are small island developing states. This month, 23 million doses arrived in Africa, which is a 10-fold increase from June, yet just 60 million Africans have been fully vaccinated so far, and 2% of the more than 6 billion vaccines given globally have been administered on the continent. COVAX is working with donors to identify the countries that can currently absorb large volumes of vaccine. And I want to flag that today the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, together with UN Women, have launched the Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2021. The publication, which presents the latest data on gender equality across all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, finds that women and girls remain disproportionately affected by the socioeconomic fallout from the pandemic, struggling with lost jobs and livelihoods, derailed education, and increased burdens of unpaid care work. Women's health services, poorly funded even before the pandemic, faced major disruptions, undermining women's sexual and reproductive health. And despite women's central role in responding to COVID-19, including as frontline health workers, they are still largely bypassed for leadership positions they deserve. You can find more information online. 2 new resident coordinators to announce today. Alejandro Alvarez of Argentina is our new resident coordinator in Algeria, and Damien Mama of Benin will be the new resident coordinator in Burundi. Both started their new functions this week following the approval of the respective host governments. As you know, resident coordinators lead the work of our UN teams on the ground, including our ongoing support to national COVID-19 responses to recover better for the Sustainable Development Goals. These senior UN officials are also the representatives of the S.D.G for development at the country level. You can find their full biographies online. And today is World Maritime Day. I'm sure you were all looking forward to that day. And the theme this year is Seafarers at the Core of Shipping's Future. In a message for the day, the Secretary General notes that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to place immense physical and mental pressure on the 2 million women and men who serve on the world's merchant fleet. He points out that hundreds of thousands still face extended times at sea, with tours of duty stretching many months beyond their contracts. The Secretary General renewed his appeal to governments to address their plight by formally designating seafarers and other marine personnel as key workers, ensuring safe crew changes, implementing established protocols, and allowing stranded seafarers to be repatriated and others to join ships. And finally, tomorrow, I'll get to you, James. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., I have a couple briefings to announce. So tomorrow at 11 a.m., the president of the 76th session of the General Assembly, Abdullah Shahid, and you will hear a bit more about that in a couple of minutes, he will be here in this room to brief you. And when I'm done, Monica will brief you. And tomorrow as well at 12:30, the President of the Security Council for the month of October, Permanent Representative of Kenya, Ambassador Martin Kimani, will be here to brief you on the work of the Council for the month. I will start with you, James, and I will attempt to answer your questions, hopefully.
Okay, on Ethiopia, a couple of follow-ups to the statement that you released. Over almost a year now, the Secretary General has been pursuing his quiet, patient diplomacy with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And among the things he was trying to do was get humanitarian access. Now Ethiopia has kicked out all of these UN officials, many of them top humanitarian officials. The Secretary General's strategy, has it not completely failed?
At this point today, we know that the needs are great. I think that from this podium, we keep highlighting almost on a daily basis the plight of the population affected by the conflict in Ethiopia and how important access is. I think yesterday we had also some updates on numbers and how much more access we need. The work of the Secretary General continues. As he said, he's shocked by the news today. The humanitarian work by the UN is impartial. It's important. It needs to continue. We need and we hope to be able to continue this important work over there.
And would he like now to hear from the Security Council and the African Union about these expulsions, about the fact that these 7 people are being told to leave the country within 72 hours? Would he like to see a strong message from both those bodies?
As he said, you know, we're now engaging with the government of Ethiopia. We're now engaging with to make sure that the work continues, and I will leave it at that for now. Yes, Edie.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Nice to see you at the podium.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what kind of contacts the Secretary General has had? Has he himself spoken to Abiy Ahmed? And how was the UN informed? Were they actually given advance notice? I mean, I say that noting that the S.D.G says he was shocked. And thirdly, the last sentence of his statement sounds somewhat encouraging, and I wonder where that comes from. Thank you.
So I can tell you that contacts are being had at various levels. To answer your question specifically, I will have to get back to you. I will get more information to you on what is happening now, what is happening later today, and what will happen. So yeah. Yeah, Sherwin.
Thanks, Stephanie. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says they've been expelled for meddling in internal affairs. Does the UN have any additional information that has been proffered by the Ethiopian government as to what this meddling might have entailed?
I will not comment on this again, you know, just referring to what the S.G. said, that he was shocked at the news today, and to reinforce that really, you know, once again, I don't think we can say strongly enough that the needs of the population are great. I think you all heard Martin Griffiths this week and other senior officials talking about the situation on the ground and how desperate, we hear talks of people being in famine-like conditions. So the situation is really dire. And I just want to stress the importance for the people of Ethiopia, for the people affected the conflict, of ensuring that life-saving humanitarian assistance reaches them.
So we understand that there's a dire humanitarian situation in the north of the country in particular. What are the real-time consequences if these people were to be expelled? How does that impact your operations on the ground?
I think on this, operations, as we said, access was difficult. Having fewer people who can manage, who can plan, execute humanitarian operations, of course, has an impact. Yeah. Any other questions in the room? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Stephanie. So my question is, do you receive any reschedule confirmation on the cancellation of Security Council on the DPRK missile problem? It was supposed to be take place this morning, but it was postponed.
I would refer you to the council on this. I think they will announce their schedule for the coming days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And should I go to the screen? I think we have a question from Rick Gladstone. Rick, you have the floor.
Stephanie, thank you. Nice to see you. I have a couple of questions on Ethiopia too. When was the last time there was an expulsion of this magnitude of UN officials from any member state? And has there ever been an expulsion of this magnitude of UN officials from any member state? And if so, when was it? What country was it? And my other question is sort of a follow-up to Sherwin's. Do these expulsions, if they are in fact carried out, does this stop the UN's humanitarian work in Ethiopia or slow it down?
If it's okay, to go back on expulsions I would have to get back to you on whether and where this has happened in the past. I have a few examples that come to mind in other conflict situations, but I don't want to give you information that would be wrong. So I'll get back to you on this. At this point, as you may have seen, our staff, our colleagues have not left Ethiopia yet. So I think, at this point, we're really engaging with the government in the expectation that our colleagues are going to be able to remain and continue their work in the country. So that is where we stand right now. Let me, I think we have another question from the screen. Michael Ignatiu?
Yes, Stephanie, do you have any idea when the Secretary General is going to issue a statement on Cyprus on his meeting with President Anastasiadis and Mr. Tadar? The meeting happening on Monday. Today is Thursday. Is he planning to do anything?
I will have to get back to you on this. I know that, I'm so sorry, this has come up earlier this week. I will follow up for you on this issue, absolutely, yes. So I have also another question on the screen from Redwan Ahmed.
Thanks, Stephanie. My question was on the Rohingya leader killing of the Muhibullah. So earlier, the international community and the UN, they objected when the Bangladeshi government, they built a fence around the camp. And also the UN objected when, they wanted to move the Rohingyas to the island camp. But in both cases, the government was successful. They built a fence around the camps and they moved a bunch of Rohingyas to the island. So when this kind of like killing happens, it really showcases there's a lack of security, especially of the civil society movement by the Rohingyas. So will the Secretariat or the high-level event committees would really would like to focus on or put more pressure on the government, especially giving development on the security angle of the other Rohingya leaders of civil society movement such as the place in the camp? Thank you.
So what I can tell you on this is that we really urge continued strong international support for the protection of support to the Rohingya communities anywhere they are, including, of course, in Bangladesh. So we continue to call for that. Let me see if we have other... I don't think I see any other questions on the screen.
My name is there.
Oh, yes, Abdelhamid, go ahead. Go ahead, Abdelhamid. I didn't see you.
Thank you. This morning, Israel killed 3 Palestinians, one in Jenin, a woman in Jerusalem, and one in Gaza. And the one in Gaza, in fact, was an Israeli sniper. He was not doing anything. He's just a bird hunter away from the fence. And the woman also, they accused her of having a knife. After they killed her, they said, we found that, which is, the Israeli escalation is going beyond reason, both in demolishing houses and killing innocent civilians. And yet the UN keeps that only to mention them as numbers when they give the monthly briefing. Why is that? Again, I keep asking the same question again and again. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've been monitoring developments closely over there, and we remain concerned. We continue to be concerned about all killings in the occupied Palestinian territories. So if there are no more questions from the room, we have a guest. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, the Security Council has failed again to pass a resolution on Libya and the renewal of the mandate of UNSMIL. How worried is the Secretary General? There's another attempt this afternoon. Yeah. I'm hearing there might be another rollover, which would mean that the plan to have a new SRSG based in Tripoli on the ground, which quite a few council members wanted in order to try and nudge the parties on the election, won't happen. Is the Secretary General concerned about that post not now being created? Yeah.
So we understand that council members are continuing to be engaged in consultation. Discussions are still ongoing in the council, and of course, as you can imagine, we will await the results of their deliberations on the country, on Libya.